Have you ever noticed how certain behaviors can completely undermine your inner strength and your image in other people's eyes? Sometimes, these attitudes appear subtly, yet end up making you seem weak, desperate, and lacking in self-confidence. Stoic philosophy, developed in ancient Greece, offers powerful tools to identify and correct these postures, allowing you to reclaim your personal authority and emotional integrity. Imagine the following scenario. You meet a woman and immediately put her on a pedestal, as though she were some unattainable goddess. You always reply to her messages right away, abandon your friends whenever she calls, and constantly change your own plans to fit her schedule. Recognize this behavior? This is the first attitude that destroys your image, placing a woman on a pedestal. When you elevate someone to a higher status, you automatically put yourself in an inferior position. The Stoics taught that no person should be considered above another because we all share the same human nature, with both virtues and flaws. By turning a woman into an object of worship, you create an unbalanced power dynamic, where your submission becomes evident and stifling. Think about it. Who respects someone who doesn't respect themselves? Who admires someone who grovels for attention? Mutual respect must be built on equality and reciprocity. Stoic philosophy teaches that your dignity is non-negotiable. Men who value themselves set clear boundaries and do not allow their time and energy to be constantly redirected just to please someone else. Observe how the great men in history, those who are truly admired, maintain their integrity even alongside extraordinary partners. They did not dim their own light so the other person could shine brighter. On the contrary, they walked side by side as equals, each respecting the individuality and essence of the other. The second attitude that reveals weakness is excessive availability. Being constantly at someone's disposal, responding to messages instantly at any hour of the day, canceling important commitments to meet unexpected demands, sends a very clear message. I have nothing more important in my life than you. And as romantic as that might sound in the movies, in real life, it conveys an existential void. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic philosophers, wrote in his Meditations about the importance of valuing your own time and dedicating it to what truly matters. Your constant availability suggests that you don't have your own projects, ambitions, or interests that fill your life. This not only lessens your value in the eyes of others, but also compromises your own personal growth. A person who is busy, with purpose, who has clear goals and genuine passions, naturally sets limits on their availability, not out of playing a power game, but out of respect for their own journey. When you demonstrate you have a life rich in meaning beyond the relationship, you spark curiosity and admiration. The mystery that arises from that independence is far more enticing than the predictability of someone who is always available. Try some honest reflection. How many times have you set aside your own priorities to be available for someone who would never do the same for you? Stoic philosophy teaches that true strength lies in prioritizing what really matters and cultivating healthy independence, even within a relationship. The fear of loss is the third attitude that compromises your image. Notice how the desperation to avoid losing someone often leads to precisely the thing you fear most, driving that person away. When you act from fear, your behavior becomes frantic, exaggerated, and often suffocating. You lose your capacity for discernment and start making decisions based on insecurity rather than reason. The Stoics had deep insight into the transient nature of all things in life. Epictetus, one of the great teachers of this philosophy, taught that we should love others as if we were loving a delicate crystal glass, appreciating its beauty while aware it can break at any moment. This understanding doesn't diminish love. On the contrary, it makes it more genuine because it frees us from the constant anxiety of loss. When you show an excessive fear of losing someone, you convey insecurity and low self-esteem. Unconsciously, you're saying, I don't believe I'm enough to keep your interest without clinging desperately to you. And paradoxically, that very attitude becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Insecurity breeds controlling behavior, excessive jealousy, and a constant need for reassurance, all natural repellents to healthy relationships. Stoic philosophy offers a different path. Cultivate the inner calm that comes from accepting what lies beyond your control. A genuine relationship flourishes under freedom, not captivity. When you demonstrate confidence in the connection you've built, without the need to control or manipulate out of fear of losing it, you create a space where affection can grow naturally. The fourth attitude that reveals weakness is tolerating disrespect. Letting derogatory comments slide, accepting being treated as a second option, allowing your boundaries to be constantly violated. Each of these concessions corrodes not only how others see you, but, more importantly, how you see yourself. Seneca, another great Stoic philosopher, argued that a true sage does not allow his dignity to be compromised, even in the name of love. Setting clear boundaries is not an act of hostility but of self-respect. When you calmly and firmly communicate which behaviors you're not willing to accept, you don't push away people who genuinely value you. You only push away those who sought to take advantage of your weakness. Pay close attention. Have you ever caught yourself swallowing disguised insults presented as jokes? Have you ever accepted being pushed aside or treated as the last priority by someone who ought to value you? These small acts of disrespect, when tolerated, grow like weeds, choking out any possibility of a balanced relationship. True strength doesn't lie in permitting everything so as not to cause conflict, but in knowing when to say no, this is not acceptable to me. Stoic self-control doesn't mean submission. It means acting with deliberation and clarity, preserving your integrity even when it would be easier to give in. A man who sets healthy boundaries inspires respect, not distance. The fifth attitude that compromises your image is exposing your vulnerabilities too soon. Let's be clear. Vulnerability is not weakness when shared at the right time, with the right person, and in the right context. The problem arises when you unload your insecurities, traumas, and fears in the very first encounters, as if you can't bear the weight of them on your own. The Stoics valued authenticity, but also prudence. Marcus Aurelius advised keeping certain thoughts to yourself, not out of dishonesty but out of wisdom. Deep emotional intimacy should be built gradually, as trust is established. Revealing deeper layers of yourself is a privilege granted to those who have proven worthy of it. When you share intimate details of your personal struggles too soon, you may provoke various feelings in the other person, but respect is rarely among them. It can create discomfort, pity, or even suspicion regarding your emotional stability. There's a crucial difference between being authentic and engaging in emotional oversharing. Stoic philosophy teaches us to process our emotions internally, to understand and integrate them before expressing them. This doesn't mean suppressing feelings, but rather dealing with them maturely. A man who shows he can reflect before he speaks conveys balance and inner strength, qualities that are universally admired. The sixth attitude that reveals weakness is abandoning your principles to please others. How many times have you found yourself agreeing with opinions you don't really share, pretending to like things you don't, or changing your fundamental beliefs just to avoid conflict or gain approval? This excessive pliability of character is immediately obvious, even when you think you're being subtle. Epictetus emphasized the importance of living in accordance with your own nature and values. I'd rather be hated for who I am than loved for who I am not. This idea captures the essence of remaining true to yourself, even when it would be more convenient to conform. The alignment between your words and actions is what generates credibility and respect. Notice how truly magnetic and influential people share one common quality. They stay true to themselves, even when their positions aren't popular. Constant agreement isn't what inspires admiration. It's the courage to defend your convictions in a respectful and well-founded manner. Authenticity acts like a beacon that attracts people who genuinely connect with who you are. Stoic philosophy reminds us not to be carried away by external opinions like leaves in the wind. A relationship built on a fabricated version of you is destined to collapse, as the mask eventually becomes too heavy to wear. True connection is only possible when you present yourself fully, with all your complexities and contradictions. The seventh attitude that compromises your strength is showing emotional instability. Overreacting to small disagreements, sudden outbursts of anger, unfounded jealousy, visible anxiety over everyday situations. These behaviors reveal a lack of internal control that undermines any attempt to project security and maturity. The Stoics saw self-mastery as one of the greatest virtues. It's not about suppressing emotions, but about processing them consciously and responding to situations deliberately rather than by reflex. A man who loses control easily in the face of provocation or challenge shows an inner fragility at odds with the solidity he ought to embody. Think about the people you admire most. Chances are one of the qualities they share is the ability to remain composed even under stress. That composure isn't innate. It's cultivated through constant practice and self-observation. When you react impulsively, you hand your power over to external circumstances, letting events and people determine your emotional state. Emotional discipline, so valued by the Stoics, begins with recognizing that you always have a choice in how you respond, even when you have no choice in what happens. This capacity to create a space between stimulus and response is what separates men from boys. It's a skill developed through daily practice, questioning automatic reactions and choosing responses more aligned with the person you aspire to be. The eighth attitude that reveals weakness is a constant search for external validation. A man who needs constant praise and reassurance, who obsessively checks whether he's pleasing others, who adapts his behavior according to others' reactions. This man communicates a deep insecurity about his own worth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not desire that things happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do happen, and all will be well." Similarly, the relentless pursuit of approval is a way of trying to control how others see you. An impossible, exhausting task. Stoic philosophy suggests a radically different approach. Cultivate your internal sense of worth and allow external opinions to be what they are: variable, inconsistent, and beyond your control. Notice how the need for validation can manifest subtly, checking repeatedly to see if your message was read, constantly asking, "Are you mad at me?" Seeking confirmation that your choices are accepted. These are signs that you've placed your sense of worth in someone else's hands. Paradoxically, the more you chase validation, the less respect you inspire. True freedom, according to the Stoics, comes from recognizing that your dignity and value are internal qualities that no one can give or take away. When you operate from this deep conviction, you naturally exude a calm confidence that is far more appealing than the anxious insecurity of someone who craves constant approval. The ninth attitude that compromises your image is displaying excessive jealousy. Jealousy, at its core, is an expression of insecurity and fear of loss disguised as protection or care. When you question every social interaction your partner has, obsessively check her social media, or show obvious discomfort when she interacts with other men, you're communicating distrust, both in her loyalty and in your own worth. Epictetus taught that we aren't disturbed by things themselves, but by the view we take of them. Unhealthy jealousy distorts your view of reality, causing you to see threats where there are none and to twist innocent situations into evidence of betrayal. This distorted lens not only poisons your emotional well-being, but also suffocates any chance at a relationship grounded in genuine trust. A self-assured man understands that he cannot control another person's choices. If she chooses to stay, it won't be because of coercion or constant surveillance, but by her own free decision based on genuine connection. The Stoics teach us to focus on what is within our control, our character, our actions, our integrity, and accept serenely what isn't, including other people's decisions. Excessive jealousy, far from protecting a relationship, often becomes the very reason it ends. The feeling of being constantly monitored, interrogated, and distrusted creates a stifling environment in which genuine affection can't flourish. Trust, as the Stoics taught, should be a guiding principle, not an emotional reaction determined by shifting circumstances. The 10th and final attitude that reveals weakness is emotional dependency. This might be the most fundamental of all, as it often lies at the root of the previous attitudes. Emotional dependency emerges when you place all your happiness, identity, and sense of purpose in one single person, turning her not into a companion, but into a necessary condition for your very existence. Seneca warned against this kind of excessive attachment, reminding us that we are, by nature, complete beings. A healthy relationship should be an enriching addition to your life, not its sole defining feature. When you demonstrate that you can't function, thrive, or find joy without someone's constant presence, you create an unbalanced dynamic that will eventually become unsustainable. Stoic philosophy teaches us to cultivate emotional self-sufficiency, not as a barrier to intimacy, but as a prerequisite for it. Paradoxically, you can only connect deeply with another person when you don't rely on them for your own inner stability. This emotional independence allows you to love freely, without the burden of desperate need. Notice how emotional dependency might show up in your life. Do you feel utterly devastated if she doesn't respond right away? Does your productivity tank when you two argue? Have you abandoned friendships, hobbies, and personal interests to focus exclusively on the relationship? These are signs that you've allowed your identity to be absorbed by another person, a fundamentally shaky, unsustainable position. By recognizing these 10 attitudes in yourself, you take the first step toward transformation. Stoic philosophy doesn't offer shortcuts or magic fixes, but a clear, time-tested path. The cultivation of inner virtues that strengthen your character and nurture your emotional independence. This demands constant practice, honest self-reflection, and courage to face your own weaknesses. Start by observing your behavior without judgment, simply with curiosity. When you catch yourself putting someone on a pedestal, ask, "What am I looking for by worshiping this person? What do I fear would happen if I related to her as an equal?" When you notice your tendency toward excessive availability, ask, "What areas of my own life am I neglecting? Which personal projects deserve my time and dedication?" Real change doesn't happen overnight. The Stoics understood that shaping a strong character is like sculpting a marble statue. It requires a clear vision, the right tools, and patient, persistent work. Each time you choose dignity over submission, independence over external validation, serenity over emotional reactivity, you shape the person you are becoming. Remember that true strength is not displayed in the absence of vulnerability, but in being vulnerable at the right time, with the right person, and in a conscious way. It's not about building emotional walls. It's about establishing healthy boundaries and developing discernment about with whom and how you share your deepest truths. Practicing Stoic principles is especially powerful in moments of temptation, when you feel the urge to send that desperate text, to cancel your own plans to be available, or to compromise your values to avoid conflict. In those moments, pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, is this action aligned with the man I want to be? Does this behavior reflect my deeper values or just my fleeting fears? Relationships mirror the relationship you have with yourself. If you constantly find yourself in dynamics where you're devalued, ignored, or treated as a second option, that's no coincidence. It reflects how you allow yourself to be treated. By raising your internal standards and cultivating self-respect, you'll naturally start attracting people who recognize and honor your worth. Applying Stoic principles to your relationships doesn't mean becoming cold or distant. On the contrary, it opens the door to a more mature and enduring form of connection. When you don't depend on someone else for your emotional stability, you can love them more freely and generously. When you're not constantly chasing validation, you can be truly present and attentive. Imagine what it would be like to live free of those 10 attitudes that compromise your strength. Picture relating to someone as an equal, without pedestals or subservience. Imagine having a life rich in meaning and purpose, where your relationships are wonderful additions rather than your only source of identity. Envision the sense of serenity that comes with knowing that regardless of external circumstances, You maintain your dignity and self-control. This isn't a utopian vision. It's a real possibility, achieved by those who commit to daily practice of Stoic principles. Every day, in every interaction, you have the opportunity to choose dignity over despair, inner strength over external validation, authenticity over manipulation. These small decisions, seemingly minor in the moment, weave together the pattern of who you are becoming. The great Stoic philosophers taught that a virtuous life is one lived in harmony with nature. Not just external nature, but our own nature as rational and social beings. This means honoring your capacity for independent thought, your need for meaningful connections, and your responsibility to live with integrity. By letting go of these 10 attitudes that signal weakness, you're not only improving your image. In the eyes of others, you're reclaiming your personal authority and aligning with your higher nature. This is the essence of Stoicism, not being tossed around by external circumstances or other people's opinions, but remaining steadfast in your principles, aware of your intrinsic value. Your journey of transformation begins now, with the awareness you're developing. Watch your interactions, your thoughts, your impulses. When you notice old patterns surfacing, the need to please, the fear of loss, the craving for validation, recognize them without judgment and consciously choose a different response. Through consistent practice, these new choices will become second nature. Remember, your dignity is non-negotiable. Your time is valuable. Your principles are sacred. Your inner peace is precious. Protect them like the treasures they are. In doing so, you don't just become a stronger and more respected man. You become an example to others, inspiring them to reclaim their own strength and authenticity. The Stoic path doesn't promise you'll never again feel fear, insecurity, or the desire for validation. It does promise, however, that you'll develop the tools to respond to those feelings with wisdom and self-control, rather than being ruled by them. True strength isn't about having no weaknesses. It's about recognizing them and consistently overcoming them. Orsaka, it's time to stop desperately seeking external approval and begin the journey of cultivating inner power. It's time to leave behind the behaviors that diminish your dignity and embrace the principles that elevate your character. It's time to become not just a man others respect, but a man you respect when you look in the mirror. Stoic philosophy tells us to focus on what we can control, our thoughts, our choices, our actions, and accept with serenity what lies beyond our control. This fundamental distinction, applied consistently, frees you from the anguish of emotional dependency and the endless quest for external validation. Cultivate the inner calm that comes from knowing your worth does not depend on anyone else's opinions or presence. Develop the strength that emerges when you face your fears instead of letting them control you. Practice emotional independence, so you can connect deeply with others without becoming dependent on them. This is the path to a truly empowered and respected form of masculinity. By the end of this transformation, you won't just seem stronger. You will be stronger. You won't merely avoid appearing desperate. You'll be genuinely at peace with yourself. The image you project to the world will simply be a natural reflection of who you have become inside. A man who knows his worth, who lives by his principles, and who maintains his dignity under all circumstances. The Stoics teach us that true freedom doesn't arise from acquiring everything we want, but from freeing ourselves of the desires that enslave us. When you free yourself from the desperate need for approval, validation, and constant reassurance, you discover a calmer, more authentic, and infinitely more powerful way to live. Start today. Start now. Observe your behaviors honestly. Identify the patterns that erode your strength. Commit to the daily practice of Stoic principles. And step by step, rebuild your identity on the solid foundation of self-knowledge, self-discipline, and self-respect. The man you're destined to become is waiting for you on the other side of this transformation. Remember that the deepest transformations are rarely visible right away. Much like a sculptor who works patiently on stone, removing whatever is superfluous to reveal the artwork hidden within, You are sculpting your character with every conscious decision you make. There will be hard days, moments of relapse, and situations where old patterns will try to take over again. In those times, Stoic philosophy offers you an anchor. Return to your breath, observe your thoughts without identifying with them, and reaffirm your commitment to excellence of character. The Stoics understood that life tests us constantly. These tests aren't punishments, but opportunities to strengthen our resolve and demonstrate our principles in practice. When you feel the impulse to put someone on a pedestal, to desperately seek validation, or to compromise your values to please someone else, recognize that it's a test, and as with any test, it offers a chance to learn and grow. To solidify this transformation in your day-to-day life, consider implementing a few simple yet powerful Stoic practices. The first is the evening review. At the end of each day, spend a few minutes reflecting on your interactions. Where did you stay true to your principles? Where did you yield to fear or insecurity? The purpose isn't self-punishment, but recognizing patterns and planning improvements. The second practice is negative visualization. Take a brief moment to imagine how it would be if you lost everything you value. Far from pessimism, this exercise fosters deep gratitude for what you have and significantly reduces the fear of loss. When you consider the possibility of losing something or someone, paradoxically, you become less desperate to control or hold on. The third practice is conscious self-talk. Pay attention to how you speak to yourself. Replace self-deprecating narratives. "I'm so pathetic for feeling this way," with productive questions. What is this emotion trying to teach me? How can I respond in a way that aligns with my values? The Stoics deeply understood the power of internal language in shaping our character. Another important dimension of masculine strength, according to Stoicism, is the ability to face solitude. Many men end up in unbalanced relationships because they fear being alone. Cultivating a comfortable relationship with yourself, learning to value time spent in your own company, is a fundamental milestone of emotional maturity. When you learn to appreciate solitude, your need for someone else's company becomes a conscious choice rather than a desperate void. Keep in mind that the real test of these transformations doesn't occur in calm moments of reflection, but in the battlefield of daily life, when someone disrespects your boundaries, when a meaningful relationship ends abruptly, when you're tempted to abandon your principles for the easier path. That's when your Stoic practice is truly forged. Epictetus, who was born into slavery and understood human suffering firsthand, taught that real freedom doesn't depend on external circumstances, but on our inner attitude toward them. You might look free on the outside, yet live as a slave to your own insecurities and need for validation. Or you might be limited by external factors, yet maintain the unshakable dignity of a liberated spirit. By giving up these 10 attitudes that reveal weakness, you're not merely transforming your romantic life, you're reclaiming your sovereignty as a man. This transformation will ripple into every aspect of your life, your work, where you'll become less reactive and more focused on your goals, your friendships, which will gain depth and authenticity, your physical and mental health, which will benefit from shedding the chronic stress tied to constant insecurity. Stoicism offers us a clear invitation: live in accordance with your highest nature, not as a man begging for attention, twisting himself into knots to please others, trembling at the possibility of rejection, but as a man who knows his worth, sets healthy boundaries, and gives his authentic presence to the world without expecting anything in return. This isn't a path for the faint of heart. It requires courage to face the fears that drive your behaviors. It requires discipline to practice new patterns until they become natural. It requires brutal honesty with yourself about your motivations and impulses. But the rewards of this inner work are unparalleled. A masculine presence that inspires genuine respect, not through intimidation or manipulation, but through integrity and strength of character. As we conclude these reflections on the attitudes that reveal weakness, remember that the goal isn't perfection, but steady progress. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, Do not worry if you fall short of your ideal in actions. After a failure, calmly get up and go on. Each time you recognize a negative pattern and choose to act differently, you reinforce your capacity for self-direction, the essence of mature masculinity according to the Stoics. Real revolution begins within you. By transforming how you relate to yourself, you naturally transform how you relate to the world. And that is the greatest lesson of Stoicism. A life well lived is not about luck or favorable circumstances, but about the excellence of character cultivated day by day, choice by choice, moment by moment. The power lies in your hands. Use it wisely.